That from Pennsylvania. Now from Washington, Senator Ted Cruz, member of that Senate Judiciary Committee. And Senator, welcome back to America's Newsroom. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Bill. Good to be with you.
What do you expect to learn from Michael Horowitz?
Well, I think today's hearing is going to be very valuable. The report that the Inspector General put out was nothing short of stunning. It is over 500 pages long, and it details over and over and over again the blatant misconduct, unfortunately, at the FBI and the Department of Justice. It details 17 serious misstatements that the FBI and Department of Justice made to the FISA court, statements that just weren't backed up by facts. And listen, the very best interpretation of what the Inspector General concludes as he lays out this incredible pattern of misstatement after misstatement after misstatement, the best you can conclude is that they were grossly negligent and incompetent and took with the most cavalier lack of concern launching an investigation into a political opponent. I think the real conclusion, when you read all those facts, I disagree with his final conclusion where he says political motivation didn't play a role. I think it's clear the senior leadership there were hard Democratic partisans, because it's the only way you justify sending in spies, confidential informants, to spy on the Trump campaign. This is when he is the Republican nominee for president. He is the leading contender on the Republican side, and the FBI is sending in spies to spy on his campaign. They're authorizing in October of the election year a wiretap. That was abusive, particularly when they knew the basis of it. They had the underlying fact that the basis of it was unreliable and was being paid for by the Hillary Clinton campaign, that they were being a conduit for Oppo research from the other campaign. It's a sad day for DOJ right now.
I just want to move to a couple of things. We may get interrupted with this breaking news here. When you talk about political motivation, that was one of the big headlines about no political bias. Let's see how he answers that question. On impeachment, yesterday afternoon, Quinnipiac came out with this poll. Here was the question: should President Trump be impeached or removed from office? In that poll, Senator, it now shows 51% of the American people say no. And here's the statement that accompanied it. Today's poll is the first time since House Speaker Nancy Pelosi announced the inquiry that more than half of voters say that Trump should not be impeached. Where does that leave us today, sir, and what does that tell you?
Well, the House Democrats' case has collapsed. If you look at the articles of impeachment that they filed yesterday, it is the weakest and thinnest, and it's an admission of defeat. You know, rewind, Bill, about 3 weeks ago. 3 weeks ago, you remember every House Democrat was saying over and over again, bribery. That was their lead talking point. And the reason is the Democratic Campaign Committee had polled it, they focus grouped it, and they discovered bribery is really bad, that the American people didn't like bribery. So they were all saying bribery, bribery, bribery. Well, fast forward to today. After hearing the evidence and testimony, they couldn't prove bribery. There wasn't evidence that a crime was committed, so they backed all the way from bribery to now their position is they can impeach the president despite zero evidence of any criminal conduct, despite zero evidence that any law was broken. They're not alleging a single law was broken. They're not even alleging the president had a speeding ticket. They're saying they can impeach the president for what, at the end of the day, are political and policy differences. That is an abuse of the Constitution. It is using impeachment just as a campaign tool. And when it comes to the Senate, I think the House is going to vote out impeachment next week. In January, we're going to have a trial in the Senate, and this matter is going to be thrown out. We'll hear both sides, and then I'm confident the Senate is going to vote to reject what has been a partisan show trial in the House of Representatives.
Tom Tillis, Republican senator from North Carolina, said on our show yesterday, this won't last more than 2 weeks. The White House apparently has given indications they wanted to go on longer. Let's see what happens there. Final question here, 1 minute left. 24 hours ago, House Democrats came out before a microphone and announced these articles of impeachment. 60 minutes later, House Democrats came out and announced a trade deal that they could agree to with Canada and Mexico. Well, what does that say to the American people who are wondering about your ability to do what you want, when you want to do it, so long as it serves your interests? What explains the 60-minute whiplash that we watched yesterday?
Well, look, for the past year, House Democrats haven't been willing to do their job, haven't been willing to work on legislation, haven't been willing to take up the USMCA trade deal. I think the fact that they announced it 60 minutes later yesterday, it's another sign they're panicking. They recognize everything they promised impeachment was going to produce. They didn't produce the goods. The evidence didn't support it. And so I think they're trying to back out of it by focusing on another topic. You know, Nancy Pelosi was doing an interview recently where she said, no more questions on impeachment. I think the extreme left-wing base is demanding that the Democrats impeach the president, but the House Democrats recognize they don't have the evidence, and this isn't going anywhere.
Senator, thank you for your time. 52 minutes away. We'll watch the hearing from here in New York. Thank you, sir. Ted Cruz there in Washington.